Today is Thursday, January 14th, 2021. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, FBI Director Christopher Wray says they have identified 200 people who stormed the Capitol. 100 have already been arrested, including the white man carrying the Confederate flag. Also, now that Donald Trump has been officially impeached twice, what is next? What will the Senate do? And the Stop the Steal organizer says he had help from 3 Republican congressmen. We'll tell you who they are, and Democrats say they should be held accountable. Also, Speaker Nancy Pelosi says, all right, Republicans, y'all don't want to walk through the metal detectors? You're going to get fined. The money's going to come out of your salary. Yeah, their little attitude. And 3 members of Congress, including Congressman Emanuel Cleaver, they want to give the Congressional Gold Medal to Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman, the man who kept these protesters from attacking folks on the floor of the U.S. Senate. Also, charges filed against former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder. We'll talk with a reporter who's been covering the Flint water crisis. And a Proud Boy has been arrested for threatening to kill Pastor Raphael Warnock, elected to the United States Senate, on his Parler account. And Kyle Rittenhouse is living his best life, hanging out with white supremacists. Yeah, that's the guy who killed 2 people in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And in Houston, shocking a number of people. Pastor Kirby John Caldwell, who led the largest Methodist church in the country, sentenced to 6 years in prison for his involvement in a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Folks, it is time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
The fallout continues over white supremacists attacking the U.S. Capitol. FBI Director Christopher Wray says they've identified 200 people who were involved in the attack on the Capitol. 100 have been arrested. They have been fanning out all across the country, arresting these folks. Many of them also been losing their jobs, some resigning, some getting fired. This is all as a result of Donald Trump inciting that insurrection, inciting that riot. The reason he was actually impeached for a second time. But you know what? There are those people who are still defending this, who are very quiet, folks who are making all of these excuses for what took place. One of those folks is, guess what? Y'all are Franklin Graham. Yeah. So-called, pastor, son of Billy Graham. Well, check this out. He sent this tweet out a couple of hours ago, which shows you how Franklin Graham doesn't really give a damn about Christianity, doesn't give a damn about any of these things. All he cares about is Republican politics. So y'all, here's a tweet that, and I'm pulling it right now. This is what he tweeted out. Shame, shame on the 10 Republicans who joined with Speaker Pelosi and the House Democrats in impeaching President Trump yesterday. After all that he has done for our country, you will turn your back and betray him so quickly? What was done yesterday only further divides our nation. Franklin, see, one, I'm not going to call you Reverend because, frankly, you embarrass those who are actually ministers. Just like you never saw me calling Donald Trump president. I have been telling y'all about these white evangelicals. I have been telling you about these white conservative evangelicals who don't care about the Bible, who don't care about morality, who don't care about character. 5 people died as a result of this insurrection. 5. One of them, a Capitol Hill police officer. And in the eyes of Franklin Graham, how dare you? How dare you impeach Donald Trump for inciting an insurrection? But here's the thing that Franklin Graham also didn't admit to. Y'all do realize that this has been the most bipartisan impeachment in American history. In the 3 previous impeachments, You never had 10 members of the president's party agreeing to impeach the person in the Oval Office. But in this case, they did. And those 10 Republicans were very clear that Donald Trump was guilty of inciting an insurrection. But Donald Trump's base are these white conservative evangelicals. These are the people who are so-called pro-life. These are the people who claim to love Jesus, but they won't call out what actually happened. They won't call it what it is. They won't hold the person accountable who actually did it. I read for you the statement released by the head of the ethics group for the Southern Baptist Convention. He was very clear. Dr. Moore was very clear about what took place. But Franklin Graham and those of his ilk, they will do anything to protect Donald Trump, even if it meant people dying. Y'all need to understand that is what we're dealing with in this country. Joining me right now, Reese Colbert, Black Women Views, Erica Savage Wilson, host, Savage Politics Podcast, Dr. Greg Carr, Chair, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. Greg, I have been warning folks consistently about white conservative evangelicals, the individuals who are about the slaveholder religion. Franklin Graham consistently questioned the faith of President Barack Obama, but he has consistently defended Donald Trump, even saying, don't get focused about the affairs and all of those different things and cheating on his wife and sleeping with the porn stars. We really shouldn't focus on those things. All we've heard for the last 40 years from the moral majority, Jerry Falwell, from Pat Robertson, and all of these people, morality and character and all of these things matter. And here we are, where a man stood on the mall and told these people to go down to the Capitol, and that led to a riot. It led to them storming the U.S. Capitol. It led to his own vice president having to be whisked away to the basement, protecting his life, and Franklin Graham and those of his ilk still won't be critical of Donald Trump. They are showing us who they are, and they are who we always said they were.
That's true, brother. In fact, in the last week, we have seen perhaps finally the breaking of this country. In order for something new to be born, something has to die. You know, when we were all young, I'm sure you remember this growing up in the South, Roland. When we go to Vacation Bible School, they had a song, "Oh, How I Love Jesus," because he first loved me. That's all Franklin Graham is doing. This is transactional religion. He loves Jesus as long as the Jesus he loves can be the one he made up to love him. Their Jesus is a bomb-dropping, Muslim-killing, bleached, blonde, white, blue-eyed, kill everything moving. And so he is being true to his religion. And the problem that Franklin Graham has now, having doubled down, and it's the same problem that those hundreds of, almost 200, that is, Republicans who did not vote for impeachment yesterday have. They can't let go of their Snow White tar baby now. You got to ride with this. And because of what your cousins and them did last Wednesday, there ain't no gray area. You got to pick a side. So good luck, Frank. Roll with it, baby.
Did you say Snow White tar baby?
Snow White tar baby. Let's just mix up the color. So tar ain't got to be like.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I heard that right.
Yes, ma'am.
The thing here, Erica, and why all of this is important. It is important for everyone paying attention, because when I made the point, you have to decide which side you're on. You literally have to decide. Are you on the side of evil, meaning the people who stormed the Capitol? Or are you on the side of those who say, I don't care what the politics are. I don't care about the tax breaks. I don't care about the deregulation. I don't care about any of that. That simply is un-American. And those Republicans, the 192, who voted not to impeach him, we know exactly what side they're on. When Kevin McCarthy, okay, gives us this speech to affirm that Joe Biden won the election, but we can pull the video on November 5th when he was asserting on Fox News that Donald Trump absolutely won and the election was being stolen from him. In a little bit, I'm going to play you this video the Daily Show put together, which is a fantastic video. And frankly, the Daily Show put a video better than what mainstream media put together, showing you all of the people who contributed to this insurrection. And there are only two sides. And if anybody is waffling, we know what side you're on. You are on the side of the insurrectionists. You are on the side of the people who committed a treasonous act. You're on the side of people who want to continue to assert that Trump won because you desire to invalidate black voters. Erica?
Oh, I thought you were going to play the video. Excuse me.
No, I'll play a little bit. Go ahead.
Okay, but I just want to invoke this passage of scripture, these two, Matthew 7:22-23. Many say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. Franklin Graham and company. I'm glad you made the distinction of white evangelicals, because what we've been talking about on this program, for anybody that's been watching it for any amount of time, is that there is a Klansman that is leading a full regime, but also a cult of people that always have known and grew up knowing that Black people were never granted full citizenship. And so this is what we saw on January 6th played out on television across the globe, that there was the ultimate denial, yet again, of Black full citizenship. When we look at, these people who have continued to support Trump and the way that they've been treated in media, we're seeing now this turn go towards trying to understand these now people who are being described as having been radicalized. And what I think about just a few short years ago is when President Obama was leading the country, that there was a demand that he say radical Islamic terrorists. And so now we have 192 Republicans that sit on the House side of Congress that will not admit to these radical white domestic terrorists, that people and those of us that live in the DMV are bracing for yet another wave of terror coming on one of the biggest days in the globe. That is the inauguration of the first Black woman, a woman of South Asian descent, as Madam Vice President. But just like what happened in Georgia on a couple Tuesdays ago, it seems like it was years ago, that was invalidated the day after, we still have invalidations that are yet happening. And so I would say that, as we talk about Franklin Graham's and all of these other individuals that stood on faith, for people to understand what they had faith in, they lay at the altar of Donald John Trump and company. They don't worship in spirit and truth as for those people who have a level of faith. Their worship has always been at the altar of white supremacy, power, and money, full stop.
The thing here, Reese, that is quite interesting. You have these folks who say, this isn't fair. It isn't fair to brand the 74 million who voted for Donald Trump as racist or bigots or supporting white supremacy. But here's what we can say. That if you were one of the 74 million who voted for Donald Trump, you ignored his racism. You ignored what happened on the border. You ignored them snatching children out of the arms of mothers and fathers and removing them and not keeping accurate records to return them to their mothers and fathers. When people said, this is not America, Black people said, oh, yes, it is.
Oh, yeah.
Because we experienced it. When they took people of African descent who were enslaved and separated children from their mothers and fathers, and separated husbands from their wives, separated family members. That is America. And when you look at them ignoring Donald Trump saying there were good people on both sides, when they ignored him retweeting white supremacists, when they ignored all the things that he did because, oh, no, but he had Ben Carson. He had Pastor Darrell Scott supporting him. There were blacks for Trump. Surely you can't say he's racist. Yeah, I can. Because I can tell you about the Proud Boy, the co-founder who's married to a black woman. See, these folks want to play games here, and then they want to assert, oh, it was stolen. But let's listen to the language. Donald Trump and his supporters said it was stolen because of Atlanta, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Detroit. And you don't even, what do those four cities have in common? Blackness. Mm-hmm. And we're going to call this how we see it, and I dare any of them to dispute what I'm saying, because they can't. Because see, if it wasn't about blackness, then those black Capitol police officers would not have been called nigger multiple times. Mm-hmm. That is what we're dealing with, Reese. We are dealing with white domestic terrorists in America.
And I would like to point out, first of all, white supremacy is the greatest threat to our national security. And that's to everybody's security. It's always been a threat to black people. That's our status quo. So we've at least evolved, and we've grown accustomed to how to cope with that. We know when to stay the hell at home. We know how to operate in certain spaces and who to cross the street for or who to get ready to throw hands with. We already have all those coping mechanisms and survival strategies. White folks are the one that's getting caught off guard by all this stuff, okay? So when you look at Kyle Rittenhouse, the two people that he murdered were white people, okay? So you're not even exempt from white supremacy and the violence from these white domestic terrorists if you are white. Now, this is not just a Capitol problem, a U.S. Capitol problem. This is permeating throughout the entire country, where you have Christopher Wray, who needs to be fired, and we'll talk about that later, who is warning police officers across the country to not be stingy with intel and not assume that they know about all of these domestic terror plots. My sister, who's in Georgia, is saying that they're on alert down there for an attack on the Georgia Capitol State House on Inauguration Day. And so what we have is an issue where white supremacy has really broken out, and it's out of control in a way that harms everybody, not just black people, not just people of color, but everybody. And so the white folks, you need to get your brethren, you need to get your sister in check. I'm encouraged by these people that's turning in their mamas, their daddies, their aunties, their exes, they whoever's daughters, all them, turn them all in, because they're a threat to you just as much as they're a threat to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The thing here, again, as we examine this, and all things that have happened after this, Greg, to listen to all of a sudden the call for unity. Mm. Let's come together as a nation. Mm-hmm. I have to remind people that one of the greatest mistakes after the Civil War was to allow those white bigots who own plantations to to renounce the Confederacy and hand them back their plantations. Mm-hmm. See, it's always, I find it interesting that after 9 black people were killed at Emmanuel AME in Charleston, South Carolina, folks kept saying, but why? The forgiveness, the grace, all of those different things. Look at how they are. They're just forgiving. Oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. But these people who were attacking the Capitol, they couldn't let go of the election. Greg, they couldn't let go. How? No. How did this happen? He did not lose. How? They were losing their minds because he was lying to them. And Republicans in Arizona were saying, Dawn, that's a lie. No, you're a lie. Republicans in Georgia, Republicans in Michigan. A Republican election clerk had to come out and say, no, Ronna McDaniel, head of the Republican National Convention, you are a lie. And what did the Republican Party do? They re-elected Ronna McDaniel as GOP chair. The Republican Party has decided, and this has been the case for a very long time, that the only way they can move forward, Greg, is if there is a full embrace of white nationalism. They are not a party that is a welcoming party and a big tent to black people. It is not welcoming to Latinos. And they may tout, but look at the percentage you voted for Trump. You can say whatever you want to say, but we saw hatred on the mall. We saw pure viciousness, and what we saw were the individuals who are the children and the grandchildren of the great-grandchildren of people who gathered in America to celebrate lynchings, who got dressed up, who took photos with bodies hanging from trees that were burned and charred. These are the people who were the children, the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren of folks who actually overthrew governments, who led armed insurrections in this country because they did not like the fact that black people were exercising their right to vote. History is clear.
Absolutely, Roland. It's interesting. White America is terrified right now, and they should be, because the white nationalists, the white settler project that this country was founded in, could very well crack this time. So they're trying to narrate. They got the presidential historians on, when have we seen this before? And they're locating it, as you say, Reconstruction, Civil Rights Movement. But really, to look at this, when you look at 1787 with the passage of the federal Constitution, the compromise that was made to keep enslavement there, that led to the Three-Fifths Compromise, that's really what we're talking about. And then you fast forward to the 1850s when John C. Calhoun out of South Carolina, who leads South Carolina out of the Union shortly after that, is the one who puts in place the Senate filibuster rule to preserve the slaveholding interest. So it's really not even the Civil War and Reconstruction. It's the 1850s. And then you have an anti-slavery thrust, the abolitionists, who are more closely associated with the Whigs, but the Whig Party fractures and then implodes because you've also got the know-nothings who are heavily anti-immigrant, except they're against the Irish and the Italians in them, right? So the GOP is founded not so much as an anti-slavery party, but as a union party with business at the center, because they understand that if the South leaves at this point, it's going to be bad for the commercial enterprise known as the United States. Fast forward to that period you're talking about. Andrew Johnson, who gets impeached, is the one who forces the issue, because those Union generals in the South, Rufus Saxton and them in South Carolina, they're like, get us land to the Africans. But Johnson is a white supremacist. So he is able to rally those forces, but that triggers radical Reconstruction, which is that little period, not even of 10 years really, but about 4 or 5 years, where black people are in state legislatures who are doing this kind of thing. And what do we see? Slowly, the federal government pulls back and lets those white nationalists, the KKK, the Knights of the White Khadi, they come in and they start with voter intimidation. That's U.S. versus Cruikshank in 1873. That's the civil rights cases. And so here we are today with a choice. Mitch McConnell knows what he's doing. They are going to try to say, yes, they're racist. Look at them. Wait a minute. Who you pointing at? That hillbilly horde that was in the Capitol. Those are the racists. Nah, Chief. And the challenge for the Democrats now will be not reaching across the aisle, not healing. Joe Biden is supposed to announce something tonight, I guess almost $2 trillion plan. The challenge now is to take out these white nationalists like a tackling dummy, unless you be You should listen to Cori Bush on the floor yesterday for 30 seconds. She did more in 30 seconds than most of them have done their whole careers. If you don't take these white nationalists out today, not just the people who invaded the Capitol, but every last one of them, and not just Gosar, and not just Matt Getz and Jim Jordan, but every one of them, every one of them. If you don't do it now, we're going to turn on you too, because you chose them over everybody in the country. This thing could implode this time, because this ain't 1850, this ain't 1860, this ain't 1787. It might finally be at the point where you got to make a choice or it doesn't exist anymore.
This is a Washington Post exclusive story. Go to my iPad, please. Dozens of people on FBI terrorist watch list came to D.C. the day of the Capitol riot. Now, watch this here. This is the second paragraph. First of all, it says, dozens of people on the terrorist watch list were in Washington for pro-Trump events January 6th, a day that ended in a chaotic crime rampage when a violent mob stormed the U.S. Capitol, according to people familiar with evidence gathered in the FBI's investigation. But watch this. The majority of the watch-listed individuals, Erica, in Washington that day are suspected white supremacists whose past conduct so alarmed investigators that their names had been previously entered into the National Terrorist Screening Database, or TSDB, a massive set of names flagged as potential security risk. These people said the watch list is larger and separate from the no-fly list the government maintains to prevent terrorism suspects from boarding airplanes, and those listed are not automatically barred from any public or commercial spaces, current and former officials said. That piece right there needs to cause anybody who's paying attention to realize what we are dealing with here. That we are not dealing with just, oh, everything is nice, wonderful, let's all get along. And in fact, here's this story here. BuzzFeed. At least 28 off-duty law enforcement officers joined Trump in Washington, D.C. last week to call for the election to be overturned. Quote, a lot of these officers were obsessed with him, one longtime cop said. What have we been saying on this show for the very longest? My previous show on TV One. That, according to the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, they have talked about how white supremacists have been specifically infiltrating police departments and the military across the country. We're seeing how all of these things, again, are moving and coming together. For the people, again, who don't want to understand how all of these things are connected, how all of these dots are connected. Watch this here. AP, a crackdown on misinformation and violent rhetoric on Facebook, Twitter, and other big social platforms could send some of President Donald Trump's fiercest supporters to darker corners of the internet where conspiracy theories run rampant. Okay, that's one of the AP stories. Watch this one here. The FBI is tracking an extensive amount of concerning online chatter, including calls for armed protest ahead of the inauguration. Director Chris Wray said the FBI is concerned about the potential for violence in Washington and at state capitals. Okay? Now, why is all of this important again as we connect the dots? This here. The number of National Guard troops being deployed to Washington to assist with security for the presidential inauguration has grown to about 21,000. That number could increase as law enforcement agencies review the ongoing threats. Erica, you serve in the military. There are more members of the military right now here in the nation's capital than who are in Afghanistan right now.
Damn. I am just thinking about how the whole Department of Homeland Security was stood up in response to radical Islamic terrorists. And here we are with a report that has been around since October of 2006, authored by the FBI, saying that was heavily redacted, but outlining clearly that white supremacists had, in fact, as you said, Roland, infiltrated the ranks of police and the military. And then, to Reese's point around the should-be-fired director, Chris Wray, the FBI has already said, and it is in the public square, that the number one national security threat for this country is white domestic terrorism. But here's the problem, and we're talking through these social media platforms that have banned, thrown off people all the way too late. We have to think about who are the people that are the owners of those social media platforms. They're white men. So a lot of the problems that we're seeing in our country is really because the people that are leading, the people that own, the people that usher in these types of, allow like these types of conversations to happen are people that look like the very people we're watching on video right now. They're largely white men. But I don't think that we can also leave out the co-laborers in this movement, which would be white women who are definitely architects and coddlers and supporter of white supremacy as well. In this moment, I think that, in our community, these are things and issues that we've been seeing for a long time, which is why defund the police, abolish. It was not just about protecting Black lives. When Black lives are protected, everybody is protected. We were seeing the type of damage that was being done to communities, the trust that was being decimated at the hands of the very people that are supposed to serve and protect our country. And so now we're at this inflection point. And as Dr. Carr has been saying and said again this evening, where people have to make a decision. You either stand for evil or you stand for good. It's just as plain and simple as that. And I think kind of what we're seeing, unfortunately, is that there are excuses being made and enabling further of this same community of people that will tear up and be king of ashes of this very country that we all share and live.
See, the thing, Reese, the people who live truly in denial in this country, and they live in denial because they don't want to accept reality. We covered it on this show. And this video I'm about to show here, this video was from 2019, July 23rd, 2019, when the FBI director was on Capitol Hill talking about domestic terrorism in this country. Now, if you go out there, people are thinking, oh, my goodness, we're talking about Muslims attacking folks in the country. This is what Christopher Wray said. Listen.
Our focus is on the violence. We, the FBI, don't investigate ideology no matter how repugnant. We investigate violence. And any extremist ideology, when it turns to violence, we're all over it. And we've had, in fact, and that you don't have to just take my word for it, just in the first 3 quarters of this year, we've had more domestic terrorism arrests than the prior year. And it's about the same number of arrests as we have on the international terrorism side.
I ask you to clarify that, because when you talk, I don't know if we're talking about the same thing, but when you talk about homegrown violent extremists, and I talk about domestic violent extremists, are we talking about the same thing?
No. So we use the term homegrown violent extremism to refer to people already here in the United States who are inspired by different parts of the global jihadist movement to commit terrorist acts.
Okay,
we
I
use
get
the
that.
term domestic terrorism to refer to a broader array of threats ranging from anarchist extremism to different kinds of racially motivated violent extremism to different kinds of environmental extremism, et cetera.
So let me pursue that for a second. So the point I'm getting to, and the reason I quoted this unclassified report, is if it's violence that motivates the FBI investigation. What we have here is a statement in this unclassified joint intelligence report that between the years 2000 and 2016, the white supremacists were responsible for more homicides than any other domestic extremism movement. Now, I see the distinction you're making, homegrown versus domestic. But let me ask you, can you quantify either one of them for us?
Well, in terms of number of arrests, we have, through the third quarter of this fiscal year, had about, give or take, 100 arrests in the international terrorism side, which includes the homegrown violent extremism.
This year?
This year. But we've also had just about the same number, again, don't quote me to the exact digit, on the domestic terrorism side. And I will say that a majority of the domestic terrorism cases that we've investigated are motivated by some version of what you might call white supremacist violence, but it includes other things as well.
Right there.
Okay, guys, let's try a little role play.
It's real clear, Reese. It's real clear what he lays out there. And too many people, especially in mainstream media in this country, want to ignore the reality of white supremacy, the power of white supremacy, and how those very buttons are pushed on Fox News, on Fox Business, on Newsmax, on One America News Network, OANN, on conservative talk radio. They are see, the problem is these people think that because we're not seeing burning crosses and white hoods that, oh no, that's not what's going on here. No, we know the language of white supremacy. We know what it sounds like. We know the coded words and how it's being used and how they're all about trying to reach a group of people, younger people, largely white men, which I've been talking about, this notion of white minority resistance. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at other issues outside of just this terrorism, we saw that hate crime spiked when Donald Trump came into office, but we did not see a proportional response in terms of arrests or prosecutions or convictions in hate crime. So it's no wonder that people felt emboldened to carry out even more grand plans in terms of domestic terrorism because they're getting away with it. You know, you cannot tell me there's an equal amount of domestic white supremacist terrorism than there is international. So there's no reason why those numbers should be equal. But we see what happens in the case of the Capitol coup, where people are getting charged for misdemeanors, curfew violations, and things like that. If this was black people, they would have charged all these people with sedition and let them try to fight it or plead down. But what we're seeing is very conservative charging. Maybe they've upgraded. I think I remember one case where they've upgraded the charges. But, you know, these folks are emboldened because they have every reason to be. They've been protected. They were able to walk out the Capitol, fly home, drive home. You see these people that are getting arrested at home, or some of them are turning themselves in. And so why the hell not? You know, this is their last stand. And unfortunately, I don't think that they've gotten the message that it's not going to be acceptable. I think the Democrats did a great thing in terms of the impeachment, you know, passing the impeachment in the House. It's going nowhere in the Senate, at least, except for to be a pain in the ass in Joe Biden's administration when he takes office. But, you know, everybody got to go home. And the people that are getting arrested, they're getting arrested for some of these more piddly charges. And, you know, we have 21,000 troops out there. That's fine and all, but what difference is it going to make if people are still walking home and they're still walking around, or they're in their communities terrorizing people and getting away with it? So I want to see a much more robust response to this. I've seen some people push back and say, just prosecute people based on what we have on there. Now, all of a sudden, when we talk about prosecuting white domestic terrorism, then now everybody wants to score woke points and talk about how, no, we don't need any more anti-terrorism, you know, surveillance or anything like that. They've already doing that to all of us. Okay, that's not going to stop. So go ahead and get your sights on these white folks out there doing all this crazy stuff. You can be all woke all you want on Twitter, but all that shit that you're saying they shouldn't be done, they already doing it to us. So go ahead and do it to them too, and stop these people from doing all this crazy mess.
The thing that is crazy here is, again, if you're watching how these folks are operating and the role that media plays. This was put together by the folks at The Daily Show. It's devastating to listen to all being back to back. Watch this.
General George Washington's soldiers were freezing cold, fighting for independence against tyranny, domination, and control. It was their moment to stand up and fight for freedom. To many, January 6th is such a moment.
The battle for the White House is now a full-fledged struggle for the survival of this constitutional republic.
We, the people, are in control of the United States, and we will take our rights back. 74 million Americans are not going to shut up.
This is about taking a stand where you can take a stand.
We need to fight back. We win because of our ideas. We lose elections because they cheat us.
We're going to keep fighting until every illegal vote is thrown out.
They rigged the election in front of all of us, and nobody did anything about it.
Call your congressman and feel free, you can lightly threaten them. If you don't start supporting election integrity, I'm coming after you, Madison Cawthorn's coming after you, everybody's coming after you.
We're not timid folk. We're people who understand when there's a challenge in front of us, we rise to the challenge. We fight, finish, keep.
It is time to stand and fight. The swamp isn't truly drained until we've nailed the hides of the alligators to the wall.
We need to fight back. We need to strike at the heart of their power. We need to show that the next revolution is just getting started.
The ruling would be that you got to go to the streets and be as violent as Antifa and BLM.
Will we stand up for freedom as Samuel Adams and his fellow patriots did?
If we don't fight on January 6th on the floor of the Senate and the House, that is the joint meeting of Congress, on these electors, we're done. It's time for everybody to stand up and be heard.
President Trump won this election, so everyone who's listening, do not be quiet. We cannot allow this to happen before our very eyes.
Liberty-loving patriots that will not let them steal this election.
We have to fight this out for the American people.
This is our 1776 moment.
Get it right. They stole it. Right. We need to take it back for the people.
It's time for conservatives to show that backbone.
Republicans, grow a backbone and fight.
We are in this fight to the bitter end. We are going to take our country back.
We need to march on the Capitol today, and we need to stand up for this country.
We're fighting for the future of this country.
We're going to keep fighting. I implore you to keep fighting too.
Freedom isn't cheap, but you know what? Imagine this, that you get to go back home once we conquer the hill.
Patriots here ready to fight, certainly have the back of the president.
If you're going to be the zero and not the hero, we're coming for you, and we're going to have a good time doing it. Don't be suppressed. Don't be put in your corner.
We will not go quietly into the night. We will defend liberty.
Today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass.
Let's have trial by combat.
They're not taking this White House. We're going to fight like hell, I'll tell you right now.
We're going to the Capitol. You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and we're going to have to fight much harder. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
This is the New York Times right here. Several more Capitol rioters have been arrested, including a man who carried a Confederate flag inside. His name is Kevin Seafried, arrested in Delaware. That video right there, Greg, you look at this particular story right here. What other reason are you carrying a Confederate flag into the U.S. Capitol if you are not a racist, if you are not trying to promote white supremacy?
Tough, man. And I'll tell you why, brother. And this is another reason why, y'all, whatever else y'all watch on daily, y'all need to watch this show right here, because this only daily news show having this conversation of any background anywhere.
Yeah.
I say it's tough because as I'm watching that video, I'm thinking about the backgrounds. Giuliani, Italian, Trump's people, and see. And if Ray and the FBI are going to make a distinction between homegrown and domestic, okay, fine. Let's take that as your distinction. The reason they make that distinction is because when they say domestic, they are talking in the language of white American nationalism. So they can put white supremacists with them, as if this is something. So Trump's, the Giulianis, the people who come from other places, when they come here, they cut ties with the places they came from. This is the immigration piece, which you notice Stephen Miller been real quiet. You know, his people are Jewish. But once you come here, there's a wall that goes up, and now you're an American. But American means white, you see. Now, when you start talking about homegrown, you then say, these are the people who came up here, but who have been influenced by stuff overseas. Here's the problem, Chris, that you have, man. The white supremacist logic is an international logic. So the books that are being read, whether it be what's that guy named Jean Raspail, wrote many years ago, back in the 70s, what was it called? The Camp of Saints. This is an international white supremacist document that they read here in the United States. Remember 1995, Timothy McVeigh, the Turner Diaries. Remember in other words, they have a fantasy about a white global supremacy. This is Steve Bannon. This is Stephen Miller. Right. So I'm saying, when I say this is tough, that Confederate flag, which is I think the third flag the Confederacy came up with. They came up with the flag we saw in the Capitol last week because in one of the battles in Northern Virginia, right across from where their studio is, right across from where your studio is, Roland, the Union Army could not determine between the American flag and the Confederate flag because they both had stars and stripes. Mm-hmm. So PTG Beauregard, yes, that same Beauregard that Jeff Beauregard Sessions is named for, met in Fairfax. Now, as you know, DMV, Fairfax, right across the street from D.C., and said, we got to come up with another flag that represents our country. Now, people say, well, that's racism. They're in the Capitol. No. This is literally domestic white nationalism, which this country will not abandon because it is the cultural logic that holds it together. The same logic that has the Confederate flag there, because they thought in the Confederacy they were preserving the actual idea and spirit of 1776, which we just saw there, is the same logic that has the FBI say white nationalism goes on the domestic side as opposed to the homegrown side. That's the Muslims. I'm a Muslim. I'm in the Nation of Islam. I've never been, but you could have been influenced by Islam. The reason it's tough to tear all these things apart is because until whiteness gives up the idea that it is the cultural logic of this project, everything else they try to do is just going to force them to make a choice. Your whiteness or your life. The demographics have changed now. And you can't keep this charade up. No, those people are patriots that we saw in that montage, in their mind. And guess what? Also in the mind of anybody who wants to talk about healing.
The thing here, folks, why we are laying this thing all out, because if you watch this show, you'll realize this is not a new topic to us. I've been telling you since 2009 what we are up against. And what we're dealing with is not going to somehow disappear in 7 days. This is not going to go away when Donald Trump is no longer occupying the Oval Office. It's because, remember, 192 Republicans voted not to impeach him. When you listen to the language of Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and others, they are speaking directly to these very people. Remember, white supremacy, just because it might have a suit and tie on as opposed to a Klan hood, does not mean that somehow it's different. It's simply more sophisticated. And that's what you're seeing. The video from The Daily Show put together, all those people lying about the election, it's all based upon lies. Lindsey Graham is still lying. Oh, the only way they can win is cheat. That's how Brian Kemp won. Voter suppression is cheating. You now all of a sudden you're upset with absentee balloting? Yep, you want to cheat. That's what's going on. Now in Georgia, they now actually want to try to put a voter ID with absentee balloting. Folks, they have been lying about election fraud over and over and over. And here's the deal. If any of you have actually read a history book, you would realize that every time black people voted, do you know what happened when we won? They would yell fraud.
Come on, brother.
Y'all, facts don't lie.
That's right.
See, the real thing that we're now contending with is that we have a nation of people who simply don't read shit. We have a nation of people who don't know a damn thing about American history.
Teach Roland.
They know nothing. They know nothing. I was corresponding the other day with my buddy Lindsay Davis at ABC. And I sent her the video that I did on ABC This Week where I talked about the Republicans aligning with white supremacy. I laid it out. I said, y'all, this is what they've done. Check, yeah, I want y'all to check. So remember, this was the video where I talked about it that people didn't get. February 21st, 2016. Watch this.
This is their problem. They invited evil in, and now evil is taking over. Okay, 2009, the night of Obama's inauguration, we will stop him at every turn. They love the Tea Party anger. They took advantage of it in 10 and 12 and 14. They always said, we can control it. We can harness it. Now, all of a sudden, Trump is taking advantage of it. He led the whole birther deal. The Republican establishment at some point has to say, you know what? We played with fire, and now it's about to consume us. They have to accept some blame.
The Republican establishment never played with.
You heard Sarah Fager. The Republican establishment never played with fire. Can y'all please play some of the video from Wednesday? See, this was 5 years ago. No, the video. I told y'all. See, this is playing with fire. This right here, this is called fire. See? And see, if these mainstream networks would have let black folks actually hire more of us, especially those of us who, frankly, are more radical. Those of us who, and see, y'all, what y'all call radical, we simply call truth tellers. Then maybe if folks had been hearing what I said for 5 years on a consistent basis, you would see more of this. Well, I was so glad to see the other day when ABC had their impeachment coverage. My girl Lindsay Davis sent me this, and I told her, I said, you killed it, and I'm glad you did. Listen to how she breaks it down. See, again, this is what happens when black folk are on national television and we are bringing our black identity, our understanding of history to the table. Lindsay, go ahead and break it down.
The president was calling the impeachment proceedings against him a hoax. And as it's been stated now, some members of his own party are saying that they will vote to impeach him. And while a lot is being made about the historical context and aspect of this with regard to the president potentially being the first ever in American history to be impeached twice, we really have to think about the historical behavior that led and contributed to this when you talk about the idea of these angry white mobs who have tried or successfully overthrown governments and burned buildings and murdered people and seized state houses. This happened in 1876 in New Orleans. It happened 2 months later in Alabama. It happened in 1898 in Wilmington, North Carolina, and again in 1906 in Atlanta. So while many lawmakers today are deciding if impeachment is the right remedy for this acute situation that played out last week at the Capitol, you know, many Americans are wondering, when are we finally going to tackle and confront the chronic illness that ails this country, which is the original sin of this country, of racism, and shy of that, history will continue to repeat itself.
It is being confronted today.
That is the analysis that needs to be on mainstream television every single day, Erica.
Yeah, or they could just, you know, have Roland Martin Unfiltered on every multi-letter network channel.
Come on.
But, you know, here's the thing. We know that that is not going to happen. And as mainstream media continues to now a rehab project on a global media whore, son of a Klansman, twice impeached person who stole 1,600 Black Lives Matter Plaza, we're going to pretty much see less of what we see here on Roland Martin Unfiltered, because there is going to be a hurried movement to really heal, unify, and frankly, move forward. And some of these very same people, it's been utterly disgusting to see some of the people out of this regime, folks that they have called the true believers, or some people who have issued resignations or just plainly stopped coming to work. We've all been paying their salaries, appear on daytime television programs talking about the angst and anxiety that they felt, and that this insurrection was a step too far. Well, the whole damn thing was a step too far. The person that has led this nation in a more of a downward spiral was the same person that pushed a birther conspiracy theory, which was to say that Barack Hussein Obama was not a legal citizen. And we have been making the same argument that that is really the indictment of white culture, that they don't see Black folks as full citizens. So you know, we could always hope for that, but I'm kind of sticking my my feet down in the coverage that we see and listen to here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And you know, for all of us to continue to push back through all of our platforms around what is going to be essentially a normalization campaign.
That's exactly what we're dealing with, folks. We're going to go to a break. We come back. We're going to talk about Flint, Michigan. We want to talk about, again, how black people have been impacted by bad decisions. The Attorney General, they have indicted the former governor and other officials because of their just absolute negligence in Flint. That is up next, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
And because of us, we have strengthened the democracy. We're the real patriots. We have stood with our country. We've fought for our country. We've had people who have gone to war, who returned home with no housing, no jobs, but...
lynched in uniforms?
Absolutely. But they stayed and they fought and they protested. And the civil rights movement taught us how to protest, how to stick with it. And whether it's the civil rights movement or organized labor, who protest today, often they are rallying, they're marching, and they're fighting, and they're up against some of the biggest corporations in America about, decent pay and decent benefits. It is because of protests that we have been able to make America better. We're the patriots who say we believe in this country, and we believe that it can be about justice and equality for everybody.
Said the incursion of the U.S. Capitol struck at the very heart of our republic. We're going to walk down to the Capitol because you'll never take back our country with weakness. I unequivocally condemn the violence. If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Making America great again has always been about defending the rule of law.
The president, sources say, initially rebuffed bringing in the National Guard.
We were repeatedly being told by the National Guard at the national level that we did not have authorization.
Supporting the men and women of law enforcement.
The Capitol police officer died of injuries from the attack.
A second U.S. Capitol police officer who responded to the Capitol riots last week has died.
We have seen too many riots, too many mobs, too many acts of intimidation.
I just want to find 11,780 votes.
Today I am calling on all Americans to overcome the passions of the moment and join together as one American people.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, which is what they're doing.
To be the first African American to become the Secretary of Defense, if confirmed, is an enormous honor and a privilege. But it's not the first time that I've been the first. Back when I was a lieutenant colonel, I was selected to be the operations officer for the 82nd Airborne Division. An African American had never held that position before. And later on, I would become the first African American to command an infantry division in combat. And subsequent to that, I was the first African-American to command an Army Corps in combat. The first African-American to be the Vice Chief of the Army, the first African-American to be the CENTCOM commander. It's hard to believe, but it's true. There is kind of a sad commentary here, and that is, it shouldn't have taken this long for us to get here. There should have been someone that preceded me. And I am enormously grateful for the service and the sacrifices of those that went before me. The Tuskegee Airmen, the Montford Point Marines, the folks who served in World War I and World War II, who performed with distinction. And it's on their shoulders that I stand here today. My goal is to not be the last. Hopefully we can set those conditions in place that ensure that I'm not the last Corps commander to command in combat or the last CENTCOM commander, and certainly not the last African-American Secretary of Defense.
Former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder has been charged in the Flint water crisis that led to the Legionnaire's disease outbreak that killed 12 people. The former governor pled not guilty this morning on 2 counts of willful neglect of duty His bond was set at $10,000. If convicted, he faces up to a year in prison and has to pay a $1,000 fine. Now, Nick Lyon, Michigan's former health director, also pleaded not guilty to involuntary manslaughter charges in connection to the deaths caused by the Legionnaire's disease outbreak. This move to charge Snyder and other officials for their role in the Flint water crisis comes after years-long investigations. Joining me with details from this story that his investigation started is Jordan Chariton, reporter and CEO of Status Quo. Jordan, this is one of those stories that y'all have stayed on, and again, Snyder and his folks tried to say, well, no, it was the folks in Flint. It was the mayor, Karen Weaver. They were all the ones who were making these bad decisions. But the reality is they knew what was going on and they failed to act.
Yeah. This is about going on 7 years, the Flint water crisis. So this is what a lot of Flint residents want, which is justice. But, a lot of the residents I spoke with are not particularly overjoyed that Governor Snyder is facing just a misdemeanor charge. Particularly in light of some reporting I just broke that the original prosecution team had found evidence to charge him with misconduct in office and were building a case towards involuntary manslaughter. But those investigators were dismissed in 2019. And this new investigation by Attorney General Dana Nessel announced today that they are only charging him with a misdemeanor willful neglect of duty.
And that is not welcome news to a lot of people in Flint who felt that he should be charged the maximum.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I found and just broke with The Intercept was essentially the original investigation team found that the governor had learned about the deadly Legionella outbreak as early as October 2014, which was nearly a year and a half earlier than he testified to Congress. They found phone calls that the governor, his chief of staff, and his health director were engaged in over 2 days that was described as an avalanche of phone calls at the same time that the Legionella outbreak was kind of raising alarm bells in his environmental department and his health department. They also found a briefing, an in-writing briefing that was addressed to Snyder that mentioned the Legionella outbreak, which killed, the official count was 12 people, but PBS reported that as many as 115 people might have died from the Legionella outbreak. So it's kind of a tale of two investigations. The first investigation that was 3 years, we're going to charge him with more. And the current investigation charged him with willful neglect, which one resident just described to me as a parking ticket for poisoning a whole city.
Remember when President Obama went down there, drank a glass of water, said everything was all fine. But the residents are saying, no, there are still water problems in Flint. What the hell is going on? I mean, were the actual pipes replaced? Are they still having to use lots of hand sanitizer? Are they still having to use bottled water? What's the current status there in Flint?
I think this is a major dropping of the ball by the national media, which you cover quite often. No, the water is not fine. I've been there 17 times. I still meet residents that still have rashes on their bodies, new rashes. I'm still meeting residents that are losing hair in the shower. I'm still meeting residents whose eyes itch and burn in the shower. There's still residents that the water smells, that they're getting discolored water. And my partner and I, we knocked on nearly 500 doors 2 summers ago because we had sources telling us that Snyder, who is charged today, that his environmental department was manipulating the testing data, the lead and copper testing, by running people's water before taking the test. So no, all of the pipes have not been replaced, Roland. Not to mention, they're only changing the pipes from the curb into the house. They haven't touched people's interior home plumbing. And that river water didn't just stop. It damaged people's interior plumbing. So no, not all the service lines have been fixed. The interior plumbing hasn't been fixed. And, let's just call it what it is. If it was a nice, rich, white town, A, it wouldn't have happened. But B, it would have been fixed probably in a few months, not 7 years.
And let's be clear here. We're not just talking about African Americans here. Is you got poor whites who in Flint, Michigan as well. And what is the Democratic governor doing? Because Democrats now control, they control the State House. They control the governor's mansion.
Gretchen Whitmer, when she ran, pledged that she was going to reopen these free water stations. We saw in the media these images of stacks and stacks of free water bottles, lines down the block. She did not reopen those free water bottle pods. She claims that the Republicans kind of blocked her from doing that. Gretchen Whitmer, as far as I know, has not, as far as the residents tell me, has not done more for Flint. The former mayor, Karen Weaver, actually told me on the record that Gretchen Whitmer told her that there was Flint fatigue in the state legislature and she couldn't get more money for Flint. So, I mean, the residents were, COVID, people are losing their health care. Flint, maybe more than most communities, every age is susceptible to COVID, not just older people, because they have been poisoned and their immune systems are compromised. But the bottom line is nearly 7 years later, no, the water pipes are not fixed. They do not have Medicare for all or any expanded health care. And the coronavirus has really disproportionately hurt Flint compared to other cities in Michigan. And Governor Whitmer, from what I could see, obviously she's had a lot on her plate, but the residents of Flint feel she has not kept her promises to them. All right, then, Jordan Sheridan, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a bunch, and continue the investigation. Thank you. All right, thank you so very much. All right, folks, let's talk about a couple of the stories that we're dealing with, and that is the members of Congress, they want to actually award the Congressional Gold Medal to Capitol Hill Police Officer Eugene Goodman. Remember, he was the officer who steered the rioters, steered the terrorists away from the floor of the U.S. Senate, and then he was able to divert their attention into the hands of the waiting hands of other officers as well. This is that video you see right here. Of course, he risked his life, going up against him. Like people like Rosa Parks and Neil Armstrong are among those who have received the Congressional Gold Medal. Congressman Emanuel Cleaver is one of the folks who was behind this effort. That, Reese, is something that I think, frankly, should happen. Again, when you see this video here, he knew what he was up against. All he had was he picked that baton up from the ground. And you see how many of them there. There were people who were saying, why didn't he shoot? He understood in a moment when he gets to the top of those stairs, you're going to see him do a peek over his shoulder. That literally was the entrance to the floor of the U.S. Senate. He pushes one of the guys and leads them away from that floor. And literally, those people would have attacked U.S. senators. You had folks like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who said that she thought she was going to be killed. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, she said that the panic buttons in her office had been removed, and they're still trying to figure out how that happened. And so certainly great work from Eugene Goodman.
Absolutely. I think he is indisputably a hero, and he deserves this honor. I think in addition to honoring him individually, I think it would be helpful if there was actually some sort of process in place where people actually listened to Black Capitol Police officers, because there's been reporting today about the fact that dozens of them raised red alarms about the kinds of, traitors amongst their ranks and things of that nature. And so I think that it's always a wonderful thing when people are recognized for their heroism, particularly Black people. But let's also listen to them. Let's also take their concerns seriously. Let's also reform the systems. And let's look at it from every angle. Let's not just pat ourselves on the back for giving somebody a medal when you're still putting them in harm and you're not doing anything about the conditions that created this situation in the first place.
Absolutely. Now, folks, an organizer of last week's insurrection says he had help from 3 Republican congressmen. Ali Alexander claimed in a now-deleted video that Representatives Andy Biggs and Paul Gosar of Arizona and Mo Brooks of Alabama helped him plan the protest that led to the attack on the Capitol. He said their intention was to put pressure on lawmakers inside to overturn the election in favor of Donald Trump. Alexander is the main organizer behind the Stop the Steal movement, who says that he's now in hiding because, Erica, he's concerned about his safety. Oh.
Good. There are members of Congress, and you had on Congresswoman Johanna Hayes last week. And one thing that struck me and that broke my heart is that she mentioned she had her son in the Capitol with her at the time of that insurrection. So they endangered the lives not of just members of Congress, but then their families, as well as staffers, people that work, and unfortunately, the maintenance crew, which was largely Black, that had to clean up white people's shit once again. When I think about Officer Goodman, that photograph that has been circulated around social media and other places, it really pains me, because for me, it is really a pictorial of what Black folks are constantly having to do, donning the uniform of effectively a campaign to defund and abolish the police, not because, this is his brother's job, but because of the history, the slave patrol history that law enforcement comes out of, to continue to make sure that Black folks know that they do not have full citizenship in this country, that he had his hand raised. And so we're always fighting back against these forces of not now microaggressions, but just plain aggressions against Black and African American people. When he had his hand on his weapon, we always have to be able to switch code. Reese referenced that earlier in the show. We always kind of know how to move and maneuver through different situations. And then looking at the stance that he took with his feet, it just makes me think about how we have to have our feet firmly planted on this soil, and then another place to give us some level of spiritual strength. And so this is the day after the Georgia election, where Black voters turned out in incredible numbers to make sure that there was power in the Senate on behalf of Democrats. You then have the second largest group of folks within the Democratic Party, that's Black men, who brought in the win victory for this incoming administration, doing what Black folks are always having to do. We're always having to wrestle between so many worlds. So I would just advise people, to set up a legislative alert for HR 305 to see if that 192 of folks that represent other people in Congress, to see if that is going to move forward, and that we will see this good man, interesting, his last name is Goodman, who also served this country against domestic and foreign terrorists, in fact, be awarded that most important medal.
Folks, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, she announced yesterday that when returning on January 21st, the House will vote on a rule that mandates fines for members who bypass metal detectors when entering the House chamber. The fine for the first offense will be $5,000 and the second $10,000. Fines will be deducted from their salaries. Of course, House Republicans say it's a violation of their Second Amendment rights not to walk through metal detectors. Really, Greg? I mean, really? School children walk through metal detectors.
Exactly right, Roland. In the 2018, the Stop School Violence Act, many of those same hillbillies that say they don't want to walk through metal detectors voted to send money to the states to put up metal detectors. And as someone who worked for it at the time, the fifth largest school district in the country, in Philadelphia, I'll never forget, brother. We used to have citywide meetings of high school students, and we had our Freedom School meetings, and the metal detectors weren't even in all the schools. In fact, the young people in North Philly and West Philly, Black and brown people, South Philly, they said, we want these metal detectors out of school. And I'll never forget, it was a young Korean girl who was at Girls High School, one of the schools that are considered the elite public schools in Philly. They didn't have metal detectors. And she said, I want a metal detector in our building. Either we all have metal detectors or none of us have metal detectors. I'll never forget that meeting. It's about 200 high schools, and they all started cheering. The point is, it ain't going to be two sets of rules, white boys. If we're going to walk through metal detectors, you're going to walk through metal detectors. And you know the reason you got to put them down there? Because your mama and them and your sister and them and your cousin and them came down there hunting. So, yeah, I'm with you. It's almost like out of Hollywood. This man is named Goodman. The first medal they gave out, the Congressional Gold Medal, was to Roberto Clemente in 1973. But since then, Rosa Parks has gotten them. The 4 little girls in Birmingham got them posthumously. The Little Rock Nine. It's like every time we have to order ourselves, you want to lay a gold around our neck. Y'all listen to Reese. Listen to them. I'm sure he'll take the medal. I hope he go sell it somewhere, because just like they're giving out medals to Jim Jordan and Devin Nunes and them, the medals may be worth more at the swap shop than they are around your neck if they're not going to listen to you. Y'all better listen to what Reese said.
Man, this is a thing here, Reese, that I find to be very interesting. To literally watch these grown-ass Republicans get upset. Oh, my God, we got to go through a metal detector. And, yeah, guess what? Democrats, you control, Fine their asses. You right? That's right. Take out of their checks. Y'all don't want to walk through? Fine. Every time you don't want to walk through, that'd be $10,000. Come on.
I love it. And you know what? It's about damn time there's some consequences. I mean, I remember when Rashida Tlaib, for instance, when she said, we're going to get the motherfucker, or she said something about Donald Trump, you know, a couple days after being sworn in. And I mean, it was like wall-to-wall coverage of how, you know, how ridiculous this was and how uncivil this was and things like that. And then you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and this Lauren Boebert and all these other psycho lunatic white supremacist women that literally just got there from the QAnon caucus who have violated every rule, who have put people in danger. And where's all the outrage for that? The reason why these folks do not feel like they need to go through those metal detectors is because that's their folks. They feel a sense of protection. And the other people that don't, the white folks that are on that side, they know better. Okay, hold on, I don't trust you. I'm looking over my shoulder. Ayanna Pressley said it best. If I have to choose between being up in here with these, I don't remember the exact words, but basically with these crazy ass white folks in Congress, or take my chances with the violent people out there, then like I said, we're going to have to throw hands. I'm going to have to take my chances because you have to look over your shoulder. So I don't understand how these people can even function, okay? I don't understand how you can even function knowing that your crazy-ass coworker has a gun. I wouldn't want to, if you had got guns at my office, I'm not going into that office. You have to handle that situation. So it's about time that she does this. I don't know what these people have to do to be expelled. Why do you have an expulsion if you're not going to use it on somebody who is tweeting the location of the speaker, doing a terrorist attack on the Congress? What more does it take when you walk through metal detectors? You say, okay, fine, I'm going to walk around them. I'll just walk through them. Get these people the hell out. They just got there. Get them the hell on out. And that's where you have to, Dr. Carr says it all the time, Erica says it all the time, everybody says it. You cannot negotiate with these people. You cannot treat them as peers. You cannot treat them as reasonable people. You have to break their backs. $5,000. They're not rich people. These new ones that, you know,
ooh, child.
2 steps out the trailer park. 2 steps out the trailer park. They're not rich people. So maybe money, because violence doesn't work. So maybe money will work. But if that don't work, get them the hell on out of here. I don't know how much more they have to give for these people to do something about these lunatics, because they're not there to be productive. They're there to be chaos agents and insider agents, giving people tours and letting them all in. And they got their weapons. All they got to do is take their weapon off and leave it in a certain, you know, corridor and be like, okay, this is where you get it. I wouldn't trust you. I would not trust.
Absolutely.
Roland, you remember when, what was that Kennedy that got drunk and crashed his car on Capitol Hill and the Capitol Police they took him in the car and took him home. Was it Patrick? I forget which one. But I remember, this was maybe around 2005, 2006. When Cynthia McKinney came into the Longworth building, the Capitol Police, because she didn't have her pen on, they said, we don't know whether you in Congress or not, and laid hands on her. I just remember people saying, so when they want to Reese's point, if they treat who they think is their family very different. But they literally took Cynthia McKinney, an elected member of Congress, would not let her in the building and put their hands on this black woman. So I'm like, that's why they think they don't have to walk through metal detectors, because they are all part of the same gang.
Absolutely. And it's the same reason, Dr. Carr, to Reese's point, how Lauren Boebert was just in a standoff with Capitol Police because she refused to be searched. This is the GED member of Congress that just got in, as Reese said, from the trailer park to the halls of Congress, who was acting the up. She is a part of this caucus that Reese rightly said is this insurrection caucus. They have no powers. They're acting on the orders of people that really are akin to their own likeliness and their kindness, that have the same mindset. So absolutely, I would love to really see some more movement on expulsion as well, because if your colleagues have set you up, you in bad shape, boo. You in bad shape.
Folks, hold tight 1 second. Of course, Joe Biden is speaking right now regarding his plan for rescuing the country when it comes to COVID. Let's go live to him as we speak.
Behind, with unrelenting grief and guilt, anger and frustration, and the emptiness felt by the loss of life is compounded by the loss of our way of life. During this pandemic, millions of Americans, through no fault of their own, have lost the dignity and respect that comes with a job and a paycheck. Millions of Americans never thought they'd be out of work. Many of them never even envisioned the idea, are facing eviction, waiting for hours in their cars to feed their families as they drive up to a food bank. Millions have kept their jobs, but have seen their hours and paychecks reduced, barely hanging on as well. That's happening today in the United States of America. Just as in the midst of the dark winter of this pandemic, as cases, hospitalizations, and deaths spike at record levels, there is real pain overwhelming the real economy. One where people rely on paychecks, not their investments, to pay for their bills and their meals and their children's needs. You won't see this pain if your scorecard is how things are going on Wall Street. But you will see it very clearly if you examine what the twin crises of a pandemic and this sinking economy have laid bare. The growing divide between those few people at the very top who are doing quite well in this economy and the rest of America. Just since this pandemic began, the wealth of the top 1% of the nation has grown roughly $1.5 trillion since the end of last year, 4 times the amount for the entire bottom 50% of American wage earners. Some 18 million Americans are still relying on unemployment insurance. Some 400,000 small businesses have permanently closed their doors. And it's not hard to see that we're in the middle of the once-in-several-generations economic crisis with a once-in-several-generations public health crisis. The crisis of deep human suffering is in plain sight, and there's no time to waste. We have to act, and we have to act now. This is what economists are telling us. More importantly, it's what the values we hold dear in our hearts as Americans are telling us. A growing chorus of top economists agree that the moment of crisis, in this moment of crisis, with interest rates at historic lows, we cannot afford inaction. It's not just that smart fiscal investments, including deficit spending, are more urgent than ever. It's that the return on these investments in jobs, racial equity, will prevent long-term economic damage, and the benefits will far surpass the cost. A growing number of top economists has shown even our debt situation will be more stable, not less stable, if we seize this moment with vision and purpose. And so tonight, I'd like to talk to you about our way forward. A 2-step plan of rescue and recovery. A 2-step plan to build a bridge to the other side of the crisis we face to a better, stronger, more secure America. Tonight, I'll lay out my first step, the American Rescue Plan, that will tackle the pandemic and get direct financial assistance and relief to Americans who need it the most. Next month, in my first appearance before a joint session of Congress, I will lay out my Build Back Better recovery plan. It'll make historic investments in infrastructure, that Build Back Better plan. Infrastructure, manufacturing, innovation, research and development, and clean energy. Investments in a caregiving economy and in skills and training needed by our workers to be able to compete and win in the global economy. of the coming years. Moody's, an independent Wall Street firm, said my approach will create more than 18 million good-paying jobs. Our rescue and recovery plan is a path forward with both seriousness of purpose and a clear plan with transparency and accountability, with a call for unity that is equally necessary. And unity is not some pie-in-the-sky dream. It's a practical step to getting the things we have to get done as a country get done together. As I said when it passed in December, the bipartisan COVID-19 relief package was a very important first step. And I'm grateful for the Democrats, Republicans, and independent members of Congress who came together to get it done. But I said at the time, it's just a down payment. We need more action, more bipartisanship, and we need to move quickly. We need to move fast. Our rescue plan starts aggressively in order to speed up our national COVID-19 response. The vaccines offer so much hope, and we're grateful to the scientists and researchers and everyone who participated in the clinical trials. We're also grateful for the rigorous review and testing that has led to millions of people around the world already being vaccinated safely. But the vaccine rollout in the United States has been a dismal failure thus far. Tomorrow, I will lay out our vaccination plan to correct course and meet our goal of 100 million shots at the end of my first 100 days as president. This will be one of the most challenging operational efforts we have ever undertaken as a nation. We'll have to move heaven and earth to get more people vaccinated, to create more places for them to get vaccinated, to mobilize more medical teams to get shots in people's arms, to increase vaccine supply, and to get it out the door as fast as possible. We'll also do everything we can to keep our educators and students safe, to safely reopen a majority of our K through 8 schools by the end of the first 100 days. We can do this if we give the school districts, the schools themselves, the communities, the states, the clear guidance they need, as well as the resources they need that they can't afford right now because of the economic dilemma they're in. That means more testing and transportation, additional cleaning and sanitizing services in those schools, protective equipment and ventilation systems in those schools. We need to make sure that workers who have COVID-19 symptoms are quarantined, and those who need to take care of their family members with COVID-19 symptoms should be able to stay home from work and still get paid. This will reduce the spread of the virus and make sure workers get the support they need to maintain their families. But we need about $400 billion in funding from Congress to make all of what I just said happen. It's a great deal, but I'm convinced we are ready to get this done. The very health of our nation is at stake. Our rescue plan also includes immediate relief to Americans hardest hit and most in need. We will finish the job of getting a total of $2,000 in cash relief to people who need it the most. The $600 already appropriated is simply not enough. You just have to choose between paying rent and putting food on the table. Even for those who've kept their jobs, these checks are really important. You see, if you're an American worker making $40,000 a year with less than $400 in savings, maybe you've lost hours, or maybe you're doing fewer shifts, driving a truck or caring for the kids or the elderly. You're out there putting your life on the line to work during this pandemic and worried every week that you get sick, lose your job, or worse. $2,000 is going to go a long way to ease that pain. We'll also provide more peace of mind for struggling families by extending unemployment insurance beyond the end of March for millions of workers. That means that 18 million Americans currently relying on unemployment benefits while they look for work can count on these checks continuing to be there. Plus, There will be a $400 per week supplement so people can make ends meet. This gets money quickly into the pockets of millions of Americans who will spend it immediately on food and rent and other basic needs. As the economists tell us, that helps the whole economy grow. We'll also tackle the growing hunger crisis in America. As I speak, and the Vice President-elect has spoken to this many times, 1 in 7 households in America, more than 1 in 5 Black and Latino households in America, report they don't have enough food to eat. This includes 30 million adults and as many as 12 million children. It's wrong. It's tragic. It's unnecessary. It's unacceptable. So we're going to extend emergency nutritional assistance for 43 million children and their families enrolled in the SNAP program through the rest of this year. We'll help hard-hit restaurants prepare meals for the hungry, provide food for the families who need it. We will invest $3 billion in making sure mothers and their young children have the nutrition they need. This will not only meet our moral obligation we have to one another, but it will also spur our economic growth, get restaurants and workers back on the job. And as we work to keep people from going hungry, we'll also work to keep a roof over their heads, to stem the growing housing crisis and evictions that are looming. Approximately 14 million Americans are falling behind on rent, many at risk of eviction. If we don't act now, there'll be a wave of evictions and foreclosures in the coming months as the pandemic rages on. This would overwhelm emergency shelters, increase COVID-19 infections as people have nowhere to go and can't socially distance. Next week, we'll take action to extend nationwide restrictions on evictions and foreclosures. This will provide more than 25 million Americans greater stability instead of living on the edge every single month. And I'm asking Congress to do its part by funding rental assistance for 14 million hard-hit families and tenants. It will also be a bridged economic recovery for countless mom-and-pop landlords. These crises are straining the budgets of states and cities and tribal communities that are forced to consider layoff and service restrictions of the most needed workers. It means that people putting their lives at risk are the very people now at risk of losing their jobs. Police officers, firefighters, all first responders, nurses, educators. You know, over the last year alone, over 600,000 educators have lost their jobs in our cities and towns. Our rescue plan will provide emergency funding to keep these essential workers on the job and maintain essential services. It will ensure that vaccines are administered and schools can reopen. Vice President-elect Harris and I have been speaking with county officials, mayors, governors of both parties on a regular basis. We're ready to work with them, to help them get the relief they need. Our rescue plan will also help small businesses that are the engines of our economic growth, our economy as a whole, the glue that holds communities together as well. But they're hurting badly. And you realize they account for nearly half of the entire total U.S. workforce. Our rescue plan will provide flexible grants to help those hardest hit small businesses survive the pandemic, and the low-cost capital that will help entrepreneurs of all backgrounds create and maintain jobs, plus provide the essential goods and services that communities depend upon. Last week, I laid out how we'll make sure that our emergency small business relief is distributed swiftly and equitably, unlike the first time around. We're going to focus on small businesses on Main Street. We'll focus on minority-owned small businesses, women-owned small businesses, and finally having equal access to the resources they need to reopen and to rebuild. And we will be responsible with taxpayers' dollars, ensuring accountability that reduces waste and fraud and abuse like we did in the Recovery Act that I administered in our administration. direct cash payments, extended unemployment insurance, rent relief, food assistance, keeping essential frontline workers on the job, aid to small businesses. These are the key elements to the American Rescue Plan that would lift 12 million Americans out of poverty and cut child poverty in half. That's 5 million children lifted out of poverty if we move. Our plan will reduce poverty in the Black community by 1/3, reduce poverty in the Hispanic community by almost 40%. And includes much more, like an increase in the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour. People tell me that's going to be hard to pass. Florida just passed it. As divided as that state is, they just passed it. The rest of the country is ready to move as well. It should be a national minimum wage of $15 an hour. No one working 40 hours a week should live below the poverty line. That's what it means. If you work for less than $15 an hour and work 40 hours a week, you're living in poverty. It includes access to affordable child care that will enable parents, particularly women, to get back to work. I look forward to working with members of Congress of both parties to move quickly to get the American Rescue Plan to the American people. And then we can move with equal urgency and bipartisanship to my Build Back Better recovery plan that I will call for next month to generate even more economic growth. American manufacturing was the arsenal of democracy in World War II. It will be so again. Imagine a future made in America, all made in America, and all by Americans. We'll use taxpayers' dollars to rebuild America. We'll buy American products, supporting millions of American manufacturing jobs, enhancing our competitive strength in an increasingly competitive world. Imagine historic investments in research and development to sharpen America's innovative edge in markets where global leadership is up for grabs. Markets like the battery technology, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, clean energy. Imagine confronting the climate crisis with American jobs and ingenuity leading the world. It's time to stop talking about infrastructure and to finally start building an infrastructure so we can be more competitive. Millions of good-paying jobs that put Americans to work rebuilding our roads, our bridges, our ports, to make them more climate resilient, to make them faster, cheaper, cleaner, to transport American-made goods across our country and around the world. That's how we compete. And imagine millions of jobs in a caregiving economy to ease the financial burden of caring for young children and aged loved ones. Let's make sure our caregivers, mostly women, women of color, immigrants, have the same pay and dignity that they deserve. So we can do these bold, practical things now. You know, I know what I just described does not come cheaply, but failure to do so will cost us dearly. The consensus among leading economists is we simply cannot afford not to do what I'm proposing. Independent, respected institutions from around the world, from the Federal Reserve to the International Monetary Fund, have underscored the urgency. Even Wall Street firms have reinforced the logic. If we invest now boldly, smartly, and with unwavering focus on American workers and families, we will strengthen our economy, reduce inequity, and put our nation's long-term finances on the most sustainable course. And where we're making permanent investments, recurring investments, as I said in the campaign trail, we will pay for them by making sure that everyone pays their fair share, not punishing anybody. We can do it without punishing a single person by closing tax loopholes for companies that ship jobs overseas, or to allow American companies, 90 of them, the top Fortune 500, to pay zero in federal income taxes. Asking everyone to pay their fair share at the top so we can make permanent investments to rescue and rebuild America. It's the right thing for our economy. It's the fair thing. It's the decent thing to do. We not only have an economic imperative to act now, I believe we have a moral obligation in this pandemic in America. We cannot let people go hungry. We cannot let people get evicted. We cannot watch nurses, educators, and others lose their jobs. We so badly need them. We must act now and act decisively. My fellow Americans, the decisions we make in the next few weeks and months are going to determine whether we thrive in a way that benefits all Americans, or whether we stay stuck in a place where those at the top do great, while economic growth for most everyone else is just a spectator sport, and where American prospects dim, not brighten. These investments will determine whether we reassert American leadership and outcompete our competitors in the global economy. We're better equipped to do this than any nation in the world. Or whether we watch them catch up and pass us by. Together, I know which path we'll choose. And that includes all Americans, so we can own the 21st century. But even with all of these bold steps, it's going to take time to get where we need to be. There will be stumbles, but I will always be honest with you about both the progress we're making and what setbacks we meet. And there will, and here's the deal, the more people we vaccinate, the faster we do it, the sooner we can save lives and put this pandemic behind us and get back to our lives and our loved ones. And the sooner we can rescue and rebuild the American economy, the biggest and most profitable engine in the world. I know it's been nearly a year that tested us beyond measure. For all of you who have lost someone, my heart goes out to you. I know that feeling looking at an empty chair across the table. All of you who've fallen on hard times, I know you can never get back what you lost. But as your president, I know that every day matters and every person matters. From the very first to the nearly 400,000 lost American souls and counting, to the millions of you just looking for a fighting chance in this economy, I promise you, we will not forget you. We understand what you're going through. We will never, ever give up. And we will come back. We'll come back together. Well, we didn't get into all this overnight. We won't get out of it overnight. And we can't do it as a separated and divided nation. The only way we can do it is to come together as fellow Americans, as neighbors, as the United States of America. And when we do, there's nothing beyond our capacity. I've said this many times. When America acts as one, there's never been a single thing we've been unable to do, no matter how consequential the issue has been. Out of all the peril of this moment, I want you to know, I give him a word, I see the promise as well. We've seen clearly what we face now. And I remain so optimistic about America. As optimistic as I've ever been. We have everything we need, but the will must be demonstrated. So come Wednesday, we begin a new chapter. The Vice President-elect and I will do our best to meet all the expectations you have for the country and the expectations we have for it. I'm confident. I am truly confident. Together, we can get this done and come out better off than when we went into this crisis. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
That was President-elect Joe Biden laying out his plan. He said he is going to speak to a joint session of Congress next month on a variety of issues. This speech here was a precursor. We heard him recently talk about the need for a $15 an hour minimum wage, saying it passed in Florida. It can certainly pass on the national level. Democrats now control the United States Senate 50-50. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris could break all ties. My God, I I forgot what it was like to actually listen to somebody who's going to be in the Oval Office give a speech without congratulating themselves, without sniffling, and also having a sense of empathy and speaking in complete sentences.
Absolutely. I think it was really important for him to give this speech. I understand that people probably want to hear more about condemning the insurrection and the attempted coup, but what the Biden-Harris administration has that's pretty unprecedented is an impeachment of the prior president looming over the start of their term. So they have to do something to take control of the narrative. They have to do something to really outline what their vision is that's not just about Trump. And, you know, we're not going to be able to turn the page from Trump. Obviously, there has to be accountability for that, which Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have already been supportive of, an impeachment trial that is not 100% of the Senate's business, but, at least give them half of their agenda. And so I think it was a very well detailed plan. I think one of the most important things he said was that essentially they're going to do this spending from the deficit. And I think that so often where Democrats have negotiated against themselves, trying to get quote unquote bipartisan support, which usually means one at most vote from the Republicans. And, the Republicans have already tried to move the goalposts and talk about how you need to balance the budget and things like that. And so much of that kind of back and forth really plagued the Obama-Biden administration that I think that it's important that Biden is already laying out. We're not playing those games. We got to spend this money. We got to get this economy back. We got to get it working for everybody. And so that's an important message. I think there's going to be a lot of support for that. And he needs to use his incredible political capital to make sure that they keep the pressure on people like Joe Manchin, make sure they keep the pressure on people like Connor Lamb and Abigail Spanberger, who are in this House, who are getting all these kudos right now, but make sure you keep that same energy and unite with the Democrats when it's time to get something done. I think it was a great detailed plan, and they have to really power forward with this economic message.
And to that particular point that Reese made, Erica, Republicans all of a sudden are going to reclaim the whole deal about fiscal conservatives, where they haven't given a damn about the deficit. It has exploded over the last several years with Donald Trump there. Republicans have had runaway spending. So, yeah, I'm not really trying to hear any of them all of a sudden talk about the nation's debt.
Yeah, facepalm to any Republican trying it, because not far from your studios, Roland, there is a rolling calculation of that very deficit that you're speaking of. And I just want to say, one of the things that he talked about, not only acknowledging the nearly 400,000 souls who are no longer here to bear witness to what is happening and to be with their families, but that he also talked about food insecurity, which I think is something to continue to make sure that that's lifted forward. When, over the summer, we were looking at nearly a quarter of this nation's children that were already suffering, but were suffering even more because schools were closed down. There was not much in-person learning that was happening. And so you have kids that were depending on hot meals from a summer program, from some type of service. Those services were rolled up due to the pandemic and other issues where they weren't seeing the kind of donations and support they had seen in a pre-COVID economy. So to say that effectively SNAP benefits, that extended benefit period, and the increase will continue on for a period of time, I think is very important. And let me be very clear. Anybody who has a damn problem with any type of welfare benefit, you may also get the facepalm too, because when he talked about these Fortune 500 companies that pay $0 in federal taxes, that is exactly zero. And all of us that receive any type of paycheck, whether you are an entrepreneur or you work for someone, you have to either pay quarterly business taxes or you pay taxes out of your check even before you see all of your money, because the government does not trust you to actually give up those taxes. So look at Jeff Bezos, who is a fucking trillionaire. Look at the ways with which wealth is worshipped, okay? Those corporate welfare whores who absolutely suck up and take benefits all the time. Kiss my ass with anybody that has a problem with any type of benefits that need to be extended to our ever so growing poverty community in this nation. The richest nation in the world is something that the United States should not stand proudly behind and say, well, we have this much suffering happening, not only in the food plate, not in just in terms of food, but in housing as well. So It was really short, to the point, more information to come, but was really glad to see the food insecurity piece lifted.
So one, Jeff Bezos is not a trillionaire. Now, Amazon is on a $1 trillion company, but Jeff Bezos is worth $100 billion or so, or something like that. Greg Carr, your thoughts on what Joe Biden had to say?
Reese done told you, get out the way. Move, as Ludacris would say, get out the way. Because, I mean, it's interesting, though, because they're not going to blow up the filibuster immediately. However, they don't need to. They've got budget reconciliation. So, and it gives me great comfort to know that the incoming chair of the Senate Budget Committee going to be Bernie Sanders. It was very interesting listening, as Erica said, that short but sweet piece. That $1.9 trillion price tag is that's about roughly twice what the Obama-Biden bailout 2009 bill was. And
40% of that particular stimulus bill was tax cuts because they were trying to appeal to Republicans, and Republicans still didn't vote for it, although they requested dollars for those projects after it passed.
That's right. That's exactly right, Roland, which lets us know that times have changed. This is bolder. It's very interesting, isn't it? That's exactly right. Now, if they're going to go through, and I suspect they will go through budget reconciliation because the budget can't be filibustered. That means, of course, that the House side and the Senate side will then have to go to each of the separate committees that have the responsibility for managing the mandatory spending, the entitlement spending, which is why, as you heard Erica say, SNAP, that's very important. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security benefits, the unemployment, make them come back to you. And then you just need a simple majority. Now, as Reese said, you got to keep the Spanbergers and them online in the House, and you got to get Joe Manchin. So Biden has a very small window, and it seems to me that even though he didn't say anything about these terrorists, there might be a way to somehow commingle that narrative and almost put it like, if you don't give relief to the American people, so to speak, you stand with the domestic terrorists. Because guess what? Since you claim that one of the reasons they were down here is because they felt like their government wasn't helping them, then you can pull maybe a FDR move and say, well, since these are your people, I'm sure you're going to make sure they can eat, right? I'm sure you're going to make sure they can stay in their apartment, right? You wouldn't do that, right? Since you want us to defend them, right? So if Joe wants to play that kind of heel move, go right ahead, brother. I'm sure the vice president won't stand in your way. But that was a pretty clear declarative statement this morning, this evening. Had a little bit echoes of FDR in it. Let's see how far Joe can get with it.
Well, it was also important because the reality is we still are facing an economic calamity in this country. And then but that point about the food insecurity was also important because the Donald Trump and his imps, what they have done is pretty blown folks off. They have destroyed the USDA when it came to how they were treating it. And the cost, the literal cost to feed Americans is extremely low. And I'm talking about the amount of fraud in the USDA is so small, but since Ronald Reagan, they made a big deal out of all these people stealing money from. No, y'all, it's all BS. Trust me. If you want to talk about where the most money is being wasted between not the USDA, go to the Pentagon.
Right.
If y'all want to talk about money being wasted, I guarantee you, we could do a comparison between the Pentagon, which has the largest budget, and the USDA, which has the second or third largest budget. Just letting y'all know.
Can I throw in one more point? I gotta shout out my girl Kamala Harris, MVP, VP-elect, because you see a lot of the priorities that she has fought for throughout this COVID crisis, specifically SNAP benefits. That's something that she was very much on the forefront of. The rental assistance to small businesses. He did mention about the disproportionate impact to Black businesses. The $2,000, she had the Monthly Crisis and Economic Support Act. So I think that being able to have VP Harris in the Senate being the tie-breaking vote, also leveraging those relationships. She hasn't even resigned yet. As a matter of fact, it's going to be really important. And then one other thing I want to say is the messaging is so important. Even though Trump has been an enemy to the SNAP, I don't know if you guys recall during the election, he required letters go into the food boxes that they were getting. And so this is one of those things where Democrats, it sounds like with Joe Biden, President-elect Joe Biden, are starting to get that you have to message who is out there actually helping the people, who's putting more money in your pocket, who's putting more food on your table, because they have not successfully done that. And even when Donald Trump has decimated all these programs, he's gotten the credit for being better on the economy. That's something that has to change, and it has to change within the next couple of weeks, because your window, as Dr. Carr pointed out, is very small and people's attention spans are very short.
Absolutely. We got to talk about this here. Joe Biden also announced that Jamie Harrison is his pick to lead the DNC. Keisha Lance Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, is going to be one of the vice chairs of the Democratic Party. Erica, your thoughts about that?
Well, I remember that kind of being in the rumor wheel some time ago, right after he unfortunately lost his bid for Senator of South Carolina. So I think that one of the things that kind of is pretty interesting for me around Jamie Harrison, he's out of the loins of course, now coming into Majority Whip Jim Clyburn out of South Carolina. But that also, there was a rural PAC that he had started. I think it was called Dirt Road PAC. Really wanted to roll up rural communities and make sure that folks that are running for office really do receive some of the same kind of, I would say, the Roland Martin unfiltered touch, so to speak, that we see across mainstream media. Of course, the failed and ghastly run of Amy McGrath. But having people like Charles Booker, people who effectively are from the people, for the people, being able to be lifted up and lifted forward. So I think with the marriage of all of the experiences that he's had and that he has effectively run a campaign and work with different people on the ground, great political directors, shout out to Bree Maxwell, and different people that really did work to give face to Jamie Harrison and his campaign. I think it's a good selection.
Reese.
I'm always rooting for everybody Black, particularly credentialed Black people that are qualified. I do have one concern with Jamie Harrison, and that relates to the North Carolina Senate race, where he formed a fundraising pact with Cal Cunningham over Erica Smith, who was the Black woman running there, who was polling and who was beating Tom Tillis in the polling. And so I'm not going to hold that against him, but what I do want to see from Jamie Harrison is a tangible plan to rectify the fact that now that VP Harris is going to be leaving the Senate, we will have 0 Black women in the Senate. This is not something that's going to self-correct. It's not going to inevitably correct in 2022. The DNC has to put the resources behind replacing or getting at least 1 Black woman in the Senate. North Carolina seems like a logical place to start there, but they have to put a tangible plan in, and I'm not going to let him slide just because he's a Black man, just like y'all don't let Kamala slide because she a Black woman or whoever else. I'm not going to let him slide on that. I want to see Jamie Harrison seriously put resources behind a Black woman senator in 2022, whether that means making sure that they're elected or telling one of these older, Democratic people to step aside so that a Black woman can be appointed. However you get it is how we need to get it. So that's what I'm going to be looking to from Jamie Harrison.
Greg.
So congratulations.
Yeah, South Carolina seems to be kind of teetering right now, whether it's Jim Clyburn saying that lift every voice and sing should become the national hymn, or Tim Scott saying don't impeach Donald Trump, or Jamie Harrison coming over to DNC. Since the early 90s, the Democratic National Committee has been the cane brake on progressivism in many ways. I mean, never forget, in the wake of the Jackson campaigns of 84 and 88, by the time you get to the early 90s, this is Bill Clinton. So this triangulation, this center-left liberalism, if the Democratic Party has not learned by now that they can no longer, well, let me just say this very quickly. I think what's really on trial right now in terms of Black politics at the national level in this country is Black center-left electoral politics. And it's not going to work. And whether it's women or men, and I do agree there should be women in the United States Senate of African descent. And there are progressive women out there. Jamie Harrison would have to show me something. But then again, he's a party man. And when you're a party man, you're going to stand up and salute. Keisha Lance Bottoms is a party woman. She's going to stand up and salute. Notice Stacey Abrams is not getting close enough to them to be tarred with that. And she's probably keeping her powder dry. And that's probably the best thing to do, because if they keep going down that road of left center politics, the Democratic Party is going to have a problem on its hands. So good luck, Brother Harrison. Let's see what you do.
Well, one of the things that I certainly want to see with Jamie Harrison now taking over the Democratic National Committee is going to be, I certainly understand Reese's point when it comes to black female elected office holders, but Jamie Harrison has to make it clear to Democrats, y'all better have a very clearly defined black male outreach program. There was a 9-point gap between black men and black women when Obama beat Romney in 2012. There was a 13-point gap in 2016. It was a 20-point gap in 2020. Even though black men were the second highest group behind black women who voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that is important because that's a trend, 9, 13, 20, which means that it could be 24, 25 in the next election, which means that you have a problem. Now, for all the folks who can run around here, talk about it's not important, we should blow these people off, well, I don't hear y'all saying blow off white women.
So no.
53% of white women voted for Donald Trump in 2016. 55% voted in 2020 after all that took place. And so, Democrats, you can't afford to blow off black men. So Harrison needs to make it perfectly clear to have a strong program that speaks to these black men, listens to them, and addresses those concerns. That's one. The second thing is this here. And trust me, you know I'm going to text this to Jamie Harrison directly. And that is this here. Jamie Harrison needs to call all of the Democratic various constituencies together. The DSCC, the DCCC, the Democratic Governors Association, and call together these various Democratic PACs and interest groups and make it perfectly clear. You are too damn white. He needs to call them together and make it perfectly clear that when it comes to your staff, when it comes to your treatment of black media, when it comes to the money that you put on the ground, field operations, you are simply too white. I can tell you right now, without the third-party groups in Georgia, let me be clear, without the third-party groups in Georgia, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock do not win. In 2022,
and without Roland Martin Unfiltered.
No, we were there. In 2022, understand, U.S. Senate seats in Pennsylvania and North Carolina, Wisconsin are going to be available. Rubio in Florida. Democrats, you can't win those 4 states unless you have a strong ground game targeting black people in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and targeting black folks in Milwaukee and, of course, in Broward County and Miami-Dade County in Florida, as well as all around the state of North Carolina. But the last point is this here, and that deals with money going to black media outlets. I am not saying black targeted outlets. I'm not saying like when the Biden campaign had Complex and iHeartRadio on their list in terms of targeting African Americans. Let me be clear. I understand black outreach. I understand reaching black audiences. But the reason black media cannot grow and build capacity is because we don't actually get those dollars. And see, and let me be real clear. Because did we receive Biden campaign money? Yes. Did we receive DSCC money? Yes. But was it enough? The answer is no. And we delivered. And we know those who did not deliver. So let me be clear. We're not going to be talking about waiting until 2022 to answer those questions. No. There has to be a reckoning inside the Democratic Party. Because if you do not put the money on the ground where the people are, you need to stop listening to those white media consultants who get paid by media buys and understand you should be expanding your majority. And also remember, it is historic that the party in the White House loses seats in the midterms. President-elect Joe Biden, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris do not do what President Obama and Vice President Biden did in 2010.
Come on, brother.
Because one of the reasons why you have a conservative Supreme Court with a 6-3 majority is because Obama and Biden did not lock and load and turn their people out in the 2010 midterms.
Yep.
The reason Republicans solidified their control over state legislatures, the reason they controlled 31 governor's mansions dates back to the 2010 midterms.
Yep.
So, Jamie Harrison, you have your work cut out for you. Trust me, if the party doesn't listen, hire, and spend on black people, you are not going to have a Democratic majority in the House and the Senate in January of 2023. Write this down, because if it happens, don't say no one said it. All right, folks, that is it for us. Let me do this here. I got to read this here. Zoom in on this photo here. This smooth dressing alpha here sent me this here. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. Specifically said, read this on Thursday. This is from Carl E. Jordan II. I really enjoy your show. I work at night, so I watch and listen to the replay while I'm driving. However, on some Thursdays, I wake up to watch you live so I can comment to you and my favorite panel, Dr. Carr, Reese, and Erica. All I can say is wow. You all are always on point, and you all compliment each other well. I love all of your attitudes and knowledge. As I used to tell some of my Marines, I'll go to war and to battle with you all in a heartbeat, especially you, Miss Brass Knuckles Reese. LOL. So call me up when he says. So call me up when the mess hit the fan. Roland, here is $110.10 in support of your show to be a member of the Bring the Funk fan club. $50 for the first year, $50 for the second year equals $100 because you keep it $100. $10 because you and your Thursday panel, along with Robert Patillo on Wednesday's panel, is a perfect 10. And 10 cents to prove to the naysayers that your show is worth a dime. For a total of $110.10. Dr. Carr, please keep telling people to put money on this show. Roland, I hope to see you the next time you come to Georgia. Happy Founders Day to Alpha Phi Alpha. Now, he's not an alpha, but he damn sure dressed one. He said, I'm not an alpha. However, here's a picture of me honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and my little brother and a couple of my friends who are alphas when I had to preach last year on your Founders Day. Oh, Lord, you can give this picture to my fly girl, Erica, and tell her this Marine wants to eat her fried salad. That is funny. God's blessing for your success. Minister Carl E. Jordan II. Y'all remember when Erica, when she left, y'all remember when we had Will Downing and Erica was talking about cooking salad. We ain't gonna never live that one down.
I cannot live it down. People tweet at me like, Erica, this is cause for celebration with Georgia with it. I'm doing a fried salad. I'm so mad at you, Roland.
So,
but salad is a great dish.
Yeah, go ahead, zoom in, Henry. So Minister Carl E. Jordan II would like for me to send this to Erica, and on the back of the photo is his name, email, and his number.
No!
Hey, hold on. Let me cover this up. I'm not gonna put his email and phone number out there for public consumption. God. But you think I'm lying. Hold on. Let me do this here.
Hold on now. Go ahead.
No! Okay.
Needs to hang.
Everybody.
Go ahead.
All I'm saying.
God bless. Good night.
Your shot. Shoot your shot, real.
Hey, go ahead. Look at clean. He ain't an alpha, but he dressed like an alpha. Oh, suck it. I'm gonna drop this in the mail for you, Erica.
Really, Roland?
Y'all, I don't have time today. I've got to do a radio interview on KJLA, but I would do this real quick. I just want y'all to know, man, a ton of y'all sent in money orders and checks and everything over the last 5 weeks I was in Georgia. This literally are the letters and cards that people sent in. And so I'm going to read a few each day. I can't literally, as that many, y'all, I can't go through all of them. Delbert says, thank you for what you're doing. Keep up the good fight. Bless you and your staff. Please accept this small amount to assist your cause. Again, y'all, we got just tons of stuff, cards from people. I mean, you name it. Folks who appreciate this show. There were people who in Georgia who were mad saying, why didn't we have any gear to sell? They saw me and Anthony in our hat and our hoodies and our shirt. They were saying all that sort of stuff. And so if y'all want to support us and join our Bring the Funk fan club, again, what we are putting together, y'all, is something that you're not seeing anywhere else. We are committed to covering our issues. We are going to be broadcasting live on Wednesday, our inauguration coverage. You can bank on that. On the night that Joe Biden speaks to a joint session of Congress, I expect to be one of those TV anchors they normally meet with before for the luncheon that day. White House staff, I'm just letting y'all know. You know, even Trump invited me to the first two. And so I expect to be at that one. But we'll be live that night with our coverage of his speech as well, providing you black analysis of that particular speech. Folks, we're going to be doing more of this. Next month, you're going to see me in St. Louis. I'm going to be doing a town hall there. Tashara Jones is running for mayor of St. Louis. There are 2 or 3 other African Americans who are running. And so we're going to be covering stuff there as well. That's in February, and so we're all on top of this. And so y'all can support us. Y'all, it's more than almost 10,000 of y'all are watching us live on YouTube, more than 2,000 on Facebook. Right now, it's 8,000 of y'all watching on YouTube. If every person on Facebook right now joins our Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle, we could easily meet half of our goal for 2021. So let me just put this out here. My target goal is for us to raise $1 million from the people who watch this show. If 20,000 of our followers contribute an average of $50 each, that's $1 million. That funds what we're able to do. That means that we don't have to depend upon corporate advertising. We appreciate our partners, but what it does is it positions us to be able to hire staff, to hire more staff. I told you it's going to cost us it's going to cost us $145,000, actually $153,700. The check went out 2 days ago. We're having our Apple TV app, our Roku app, our app for Xbox, for Twitch, for Samsung TV, and for, I think I mentioned all of them. That's being built as well. So that way, our 24-hour live streaming channel, we're going to have that as well. So it won't be just you watch us for these 2 hours. We're going to be streaming, and it's going to be an ad-supported network that we're building as well. And so I'll have more to announce about that a little bit later. We want y'all to support us. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is paypal.me/R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo.com/RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Everybody who gives $50 or more gets a personal shout out from me on the show. And so that's what we got going on. So we certainly appreciate it. And Eric, I'm going to be sure and drop this in the mail from Minister Carl E. Jordan. To the back, to Erica. Nice little red heart.
Roland.
Hold on. Henry, do this here. I want you to zoom in, Henry. And I want you to give me Henry, I want you to zoom in and give me a 2-box. I need a 2-box. No! I need you to Henry, give me a 2-box. I need a 2-box. Come on, I need a 2-box. Come on,
Roland's so messy.
What? I'm just saying. I feel like I'm Chuck Woolery. I feel I'm about to say 2 and 2.
No, but we appreciate the support of RMU.
Go ahead. Oh, booyah! Hell to the yeah!
No! It's gonna be a whole situation.
What? He might be a gun owner, Erica.
Sir,
situation. Don't mess
that is a no.
What?
That will be enough.
Hey, all I'm saying, we gotta go. I'll see y'all tomorrow right here, Roland Martin Unfiltered. Reese, Greg, Erica, thanks a bunch. Yeah, and I forgot who gave me this damn Donald shirt, but I appreciate you giving it to me. It was an appropriate day to wear it. I got to go. Hi!